What is the worst physical pain you have ever experienced? Healing from 1, 2, 3rd-degree burns. An infection resulting from a tumor in the marrow of my jawbone split it open along its length like an overripe fruit. It was approximately how it sounds. Tooth abscess. Imagine someone taking a red-hot nail and rehammering it into your gums. Each heartbeat is another hit of the hammer. And Florida will not hand out pain medication for them. You just have to suffer while antibiotics kick in over a week. Tooth abscess in the early days of the pandemic. I wasn't able to see a dentist for 5 days. 5 days of the worst and most unrelenting pain I've ever experienced. I couldn't sleep or eat the entire time. I was losing my mind by the end of it. There's a Scandinavian story about a cruel bandit. The locals finally got together, broke his legs, beat him, cut him up, and dragged out his intestines. As he was dying, they asked how he liked it. He said, "I had a toothache once that was worse than this." Being on fire. I screamed like a wounded animal. You could probably hear me from miles away. I almost fought a nurse when she wasn't going to give me more morphine. Edit. Since everyone is tagging onto here. Mine honestly wasn't that bad, just flash fire from gasoline. I was 20. I had 2nd-degree burns on my face, but I don't have any scarring. Some of these stories under me are pretty horrific, and having been there, I'm so sorry to every one of them. I don't think I would have been in more pain if I had been more burned, even. I just would have had the same pain in more areas, if that makes sense. The day before I started 1st grade, I accidentally sliced a deep cut through my hand that nearly severed my pinky entirely. I actually didn't even register it right away because the knife cut through the nerve on that side of the hand. The worst pain wasn't the cut itself, but sticking my hand in the disinfecting solution in the was a feeling similar to my entire hand being set on fire. This will no doubt pale in comparison to the entries here. It was gas pain. Started around 10 p.m., couldn't shake it. I tried everything. It just got worse and worse. I started having problems breathing. It was so painful. Every breath was like a stab wound internally. As a grown man, I was whimpering, and just debilitated. Around 2:30 a.m., my roommate brought me to the hospital, and I ended up passing gas literally outside of the hospital, and like that, I felt relief. I've broken bones before and I've also had gas pain before, but this one time was the worst physical pain I've felt. Like my guts were twisting and someone was stabbing them with a hit knife. Herniated disc in my lower back. 3 months of sciatica. I had abdominal surgery, search RPLND, for cancer 10 years ago. There is a scar that goes from my crotch to just below my sternum where they took all my guts out, extracted the tumors, and put my guts back in. About 8 hours after surgery, pumped full of drugs, I decided to go for a walk. I used the bed control to seat myself upright, used my IV dolly as support to get out of bed, then carefully, like a bent-over geriatric, shuffled my way to the door. See, the trick was to support myself as much as possible with my lower back and keep my abdomen out of it. And it worked for a few steps until the vertigo hit me. I lurched forward and tensed. And then I felt my intestines settle, the hemispheres of my abdomen strain against the internal stitches, the two halves sort of float independently, and every layer of skin rip against the staples. I basically got to feel a nice little sample of evisceration, and there was no amount of narcotic numbness that could stop pain that deep. Truly, I empathize with William Wallace. It wasn't fun. So I puked blood, which didn't feel nice, shuffled my way back to bed, and hit the drug button. 2-day-long migraine. I seriously considered killing myself. Did pass out at least a couple of times. Glass shards piecing through my stomach, good times. Kidney stone. It took 74 hours to pass and it was excruciating the whole time. Having an ovarian cyst burst your fallopian tube feels a bit like your utthole exploded. Although it's terrifying you don't really know what the pain is at the time. I've had 2 kids, also. Pinched nerve in my neck. Literally sent me to theater, tooth abscess. Inner ear infection. It felt like an ice pick had been hammered into my head through my ear. What is the scariest movie you ever watched? The Ring. When I was 9 or 10, that was scary. Hereditary is the only one to scare me as an adult. White Noise. Wasn't scary when I watched it in the theater, but became very scary when my car stereo only picked up static the whole ride home. The Descent. Horrible monsters mixed with darkness and claustrophobia makes a scary movie. Arachnophobia because I have arachnophobia. Sinister has always scared the hit out of me. It took me 2 tries to watch it. It's the only movie I've ever turned off from being so scared. Although it's not necessarily a horror movie, Kid was traumatizing due to my age when it came out. It left me with a pit in my stomach that didn't subside for weeks. This will sound silly, but Ernest Scared Stupid really scared me when I was a little kid. What celebrity death saddened you the most? Robin Williams. I loved that man. Grant Imahara. Alan Rickman. Anthony Bourdain. I miss his snarky attitude. Steve Irwin, Sean Locke and Shane Warne were a big kick in the alls as well. Chester Bennington. Mr. Rogers. Chris Cornell. So talented. Gone too soon and died so tragically. Chadwick Boseman, R.I.P. Black Panther. Heath Ledger. Sir Terry Pratchett. He and his works both made the world a better, more interesting place. Do you fart in front of your partner? Why? Why not? Very rarely. I mean, I won't die of embarrassment, but I also won't do it out of respect for the fact that nobody else wants to smell that. The kids though, I fart on them a lot. No, I fart behind my partner, so it sneaks up on her. I will hold in a good fart and go find my wife to present it to her. No, but I also try not to do it in front of anyone if I can help it. The smell isn't pleasant obviously, so I prefer to go in an empty room or the bathroom so no one else has to smell it. No embarrassment factor or anything, just don't want to subject people to a stink unnecessarily. Yes. Sometimes I do it by accident, sometimes I do it intentionally. When my partner visits, when we're in bed and we get quiet because we're trying to sleep, I'll randomly let one rip after about 10 minutes of silences and then we'll burst out laughing. I mean, according to the comments in our house, it's always the dogs. But yes, I do. We're married. I wasn't about to spend the rest of my life hiding a very natural bodily function. He also knows that I oop. How did you lose your virginity? I had X. My first girlfriend was born without a uterus. After the normal fooling around for weeks and slowly building up to losing our virginities, we finally decided to try having X. At this point, we obviously weren't aware of her condition, although all she knew was that she didn't start having periods yet and chalked it up to other factors. The issue with being born without a uterus means that the vaginal canal doesn't end up developing because it has nowhere to go, so although the vaginal entrance is there, you're basically pressing your anus into a wall. Needless to say, we were confused and frustrated for several days to weeks of attempting, and would ask other classmates for advice on why it was happening. Finally, a few weeks after us trying and her visiting the doctor, she finally got her diagnosis and we had our answer. The doctor gave her some dilators, which are basically just phallic objects of varying size for her to basically massage her vaginal canal daily until she formed one. We decided to come up with another solution until then, and long story short, I lost my virginity by having anal sex with her. It was basically a mix of anal and vaginal as she developed her canal throughout the rest of the relationship. P.S. Thanks for the award, smiley face. My long-distance online girlfriend came to visit me. I had my first romantic kiss when I picked her up from the airport. I drove us to a small vacation apartment that I had rented for the first 3 nights. After unpacking some stuff and her calling her mom to say she had arrived, she went to take a shower. When she came out, she wore a negligee and seduced me. I was hanging out with some friends at my house and this girl joked about how I wouldn't UCK her right then and there. Well, I wasn't joking, and I did. But turns out that my buddy who was there paid her $25 to do it. Which I'm flattered it costed so little, but at the same time, I mean, my virginity was bought, sold behind my back. So that hurts in a hard to describe way. Edit. You're all making me wish I said no so I could sell my virginity for more XD. I'll let you know. I never lose. My boyfriend thought it wouldn't fit, I thought so too. Spent the first few minutes trying to get eaten, then I got on top and sat on him. One of the best moments of my life. 15 years old at Disney World in Orlando. Met a French girl, 16, in the pool and she took me to her hotel room while her parents were out. ILOVEDISNEY. On the bench to the kitchen table in my parents' house. It was my first boyfriend and we had secretly loved each other for years. We finally started dating and we were both afraid to be intimate until finally, in the middle of the night while everyone was asleep and we were eating some snacks, I was like, "Take your pants off." Anda jumped up and said, "I thought you'd never ask." I was extremely innocent, just as a person. I had only ever kissed 2 boys before dating this guy from another school my senior year of high school. He was a piece of hit and I was too innocent and naive to see the warning signs. At first it was great. One night he kept asking me to give him head. I kept saying I wasn't ready and that I didn't want to. He kept pressing it until I gave in. After that, every time I saw him he wanted one. Then, he cheated on me. I found out. Confided in my mom. She gave me terrible advice. Stayed with him. Then, one day, he picks me up. His parents aren't home. Same thing as the low job, I kept saying no, until I gave in. It hurt. It wouldn't fit. He made me get on top so he could push it in. It hurt. It wasn't fun. Right after, he took me home. That was it. I took a shower and cried. I didn't know how I felt. I convinced myself I liked it, but the whole event caused a lot of issues down the road for my mental health. Turns out, he lied about his whole personality. Heck knew what I was like from mutual friends and sculpted himself to match it. Later on, I found out. He lied about being a virgin. He thought it would be easier to get me to sleep with him if he was a virgin too. He also preyed on freshmen at his high school, apparently. Sorry for the heavy answer. I've never really told anyone, until now. I visited my long-distance BF for the first time and we were planning to UCK on a bouncy castle in the middle of the night. We got there and the bouncy castle was gone, but I told him I still wanted to UCK him, so he told me to lay down right there on the hill, and that's how it happened, lol. It was in an emergency fire exit staircase in school when I was 16. By putting my boyfriend's ick inside of my vagina. I was 15, a girl I liked were walking from school to where work together. She said she had some weed and wanted to smoke a joint before work but didn't know how to roll one. So we detoured behind an abandoned building and I rolled the joint and we smoked it. Me being a smart SSI asked if I get an award for rolling it. Next thing I know I'm losing my virginity on a concrete slab behind an old warehouse. After close that night at work we did it again in the place tubes.